this. So we evaluate students by looking at a variety of different indicators. Of course, for NYU and also for Cambridge and any other really competitive international university, we're looking at more than just academic excellence. Of course, this is the first and foremost thing that we're looking at. We're looking for students who have great achievements in academics and can do this academic work. But for NYU, we look beyond that. So not only having those high grades and doing well on your standardized tests, but we're also looking for a sense of intellectual curiosity. Plain and simple, we want students who love to learn and who are really eager to broaden themselves and gain more information. Students who are studying hard and getting really good grades, not just because your teachers are telling you to do this, your parents are telling you to do this, but because you would be doing it anyway, just because you love to learn and you're eager to gain more information. We also want students with some kind of leadership ability. This can be things like being class president or captain of the football team, but we have a very broad category in terms of leadership. We really look for anything that you pursue and you have accomplishments in those areas. So we want to see that you've taken on some kind of initiative in that way. And we also want students who are adventurous and entrepreneurial and innovators and pioneers who are eager to go out and do something different with their university education. So these kinds of things are important to us. We also want students with a kind of global mindset. I'm sure that's something that probably you've heard from a lot of universities. A lot of universities are telling you that they're looking for global citizens. And at the end of the day, I'm really not sure exactly what a global citizen is. But for NYU, I think we can say that a student with this kind of global mindset is someone who really is eager to learn from someone who's had very different life experiences from them, who come from different backgrounds and are eager to learn to communicate across these cultural boundaries and to really expand themselves in that way. I think a student who, when they're put in a classroom or a room with lots of students from a lot of different countries, we're looking for the student who is eager to find the person who's most unlike them and start a conversation with them. So this kind of eagerness to learn from difference is something that sets them apart. So how do we assess these kinds of things, or how do we get this information from you? Obviously, just looking at your standardized tests, we won't necessarily get all of these kinds of details, but these are the typical components that competitive US universities ask students to submit. So of course, your application form, there are a lot of different online application systems. NYU uses the Common App. We also typically ask for some kind of standardized test. There are a lot of tests that you've probably heard of before, like SAT and ACT. We also accept a really wide range of international qualifications. So for example, the Abitur, you can submit predicted results for your Abitur in order to be considered for the university. One thing I do want to note is that, of course, during these times of pandemic, we understand that ordinarily this process is very difficult when there's not a pandemic going on. So we are working with students to make sure that they can submit their very best application. So if for some reason you have access to a standard test or you're impacted in some way, NYU this year is test optional. So that's something in these times I would encourage you to kind of do your research and see what universities are asking for. But of course, we go beyond just these standardized tests. We're interested in hearing about your extracurricular activities. So by definition, anything that you do outside of the classroom. Also, letters of recommendation. NYU requires 2, one from a counselor or a class teacher, one from a teacher who's had you in the classroom. And there's also an optional 3rd letter. If you have someone who's observed you outside of class, like a coach or a boss or someone who's supervised you at a volunteer activity, really anyone who can tell us something that we might not hear from your counselor or your teacher, that can kind of give this more 3D perspective of you. This can be a positive thing to include. We also require 2 essays. There's one that is a personal statement, so it's a bit more general, a chance to express some of these things that I talked about before, like intellectual curiosity and global mindset, and really, it's really kind of like painting a self-portrait. It's a chance for you to show us a bit more about yourself, things that we can't find just by looking at your grades or your list of activities, and gives a little bit more qualitative information than just listing your accomplishments. We also have a why NYU essay, so a university-specific essay. We want to know why us out of the thousands of universities you could apply to, why you specifically are interested in applying to us. And by the same turn, why you out of the tens of thousands of universities you could apply to, what makes our university such a great fit for you. So it takes a little bit more reflection, and we want to have really clear reasons on why you feel that you would be a good fit for our university. And also, most universities require some kind of interview. Well, not all, but some. And this differs from university to university. Sam will talk a bit about what this involves for Cambridge. For NYU Abu Dhabi, this is a candidate weekend where we actually fly students to campus, where they get to spend 3 days kind of getting to see the city itself, living on campus, having conversations with current students and faculty, and really seeing if it's a right fit for you. And it's a chance for us to get to know you as well. So this will differ from university to university, but these are the kinds of things that that we use to assess your application. So how do we do this? How do we take all of these components? This is our holistic model. So as I said at the beginning, of course, we look for strong academics. This is kind of the cornerstone. We want to see students with strong grades, but it doesn't end with just grades. We'll actually look at the kinds of classes you're taking. You know, if there are higher level classes that are available to you in mathematics and you're talented in mathematics, we want to see that you're taking those and not just taking really easy classes to skip by. We also want to see that you go above and beyond. I think for competitive universities, it's not enough just to get good grades and do the assignments that you've been asked to do. We want to see that you go out and pursue opportunities. Maybe you participate in academic Olympiads or some other academic extracurricular opportunities, and that you've received awards in these areas, that you've received academic honors. So always we're looking to see that, that you're going above and beyond. The same thing goes for extracurricular activities. So what you do outside of class. It can be these typical things like student government and team sports or dance and music. But we understand that, you know, this isn't available to all students in every country, especially in times of the pandemic. So this is a very open category for us. You know, if let's say you have a lot of family responsibilities and you have to take care of a little brother or sister, and or you have to do paid work or volunteer work, let us know about these kinds of things. This kind of feeds into the application and lets us know more about you as a person. We also want to see your personal fit for the university. As I mentioned before, we have a why NYU question. So why us and why you? So it's your chance to explain in detail these smaller things that make you a fit for the university. And obviously, this is a Venn diagram for the very important reason that you know, not one single part of this is enough. So it's not enough just to have the best grades in your class and to be really strong academically. We're also looking students who have engagement outside of the classroom and accomplishments there. The same thing for the personal fit. It really takes the assembly of all of these things to make a student who is competitive in their application to NYU. So with that said, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Sam so he can explain a bit how Cambridge approaches this. And then after that, we can kind of compare and contrast the way we look at our students.
I have just realised that I was muted. Apologies. It always happens. Thank you, Justin. That presentation was brilliant, and I look forward to talking afterwards with you about some of the similarities and differences between our systems. So, as you can see there, my name's Sam. I'm from the Cambridge Admissions Office. I'm going to take you through some similar content now for Cambridge University. Now, many of you may have already heard about Cambridge. You may have a vague understanding of the university and of the way that we are structured. But I wanted to start off by highlighting that Cambridge is set up slightly differently from a lot of other universities in the UK and overseas that you might come across when you're doing research into this. Cambridge is what's known as a collegiate university, and so that means that we are made up of lots of different colleges, 29 undergraduate colleges in total. The best way to think of colleges is essentially as mini campuses that are spread throughout the city of Cambridge, which is located about 50 miles north of London in the UK. And the colleges are spread throughout the city centre, and they are essentially students' main hub during their time at the university. They provide accommodation, they provide facilities for catering, for recreation, and they provide study facilities as well. So colleges are really where all of our undergraduate students are based throughout their undergraduate degree at Cambridge. The colleges are also really important for applicants to the university because they run the undergraduate admissions process. So every undergraduate application to Cambridge has to go through one of our colleges. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on, and about how colleges play a role in the process and about how you might want to go about choosing a particular college to apply to. But I think, as I say, the best way to view colleges is essentially as mini campuses within the university. There will be students at every college who are doing the full range of courses that you can study at Cambridge. So there may be a small number of other students at your college doing the same course as you, and then many others in your cohort who are looking at different subjects, completely different topic areas. Where the university comes in is really on the academic side. So our university departments and faculties will be the parts of the university that set the content of the course you're studying. The departments also organise the teaching of those courses, so through lectures, seminars, practical work, everything that you'd expect from a university course. They will also set and mark exams that you'll take at the end of every year. And then finally, it's the university that awards your degree. So this is particularly important. There are no subject specialist colleges at Cambridge. Most of them offer all of the courses that you can study at Cambridge. And your degree, as I say, comes directly from the university rather than from the college that you were based at. On the academic side of things, Cambridge is fortunate to have a fantastic reputation for teaching and learning. We have 30 undergraduate courses in total, so that's quite a bit smaller than you might expect to find at other institutions in the UK and overseas. But those courses are very broad, and you can see there that they cover almost double the number of subject areas. And we do have particularly broad courses like natural sciences or human, social, and political sciences, which cover a wide range of topics within those areas and allow you lots of flexibility, choosing modules that you're interested in and pursuing those through your degree. As Cambridge is a research-intensive university and a member of the Russell Group in the UK, which is a group of research-led universities, we do make real effort to put that research into practice and actually incorporate it into the content of our undergraduate courses. So it's very often the case that undergraduate courses will be updated every couple of years or so with the latest research that our academics are carrying out, as well as teaching undergraduate students. I mentioned earlier on, Cambridge is very fortunate to have a real concentration of academics who are not just national leaders, but also in some cases international leaders as well in their particular fields. And we try and involve those subject leaders as much as possible in teaching, as well as the research that they'll be carrying out for the university. And one of the ways that we bring academics into very close contact with students is through our small group supervision system. Now, supervision is essentially an hour-long session that all students at Cambridge have at least once a week. It's something that you would produce work for. So you might write an essay, you might do some problem-solving activities. It really depends on the course. And your supervisor will then provide feedback on the work that you have submitted. So you'll be able to have a really in-depth discussion with them about that topic that you've been covering, about anything that you are stuck on, anything you've come across in lectures that you've perhaps not understood first time round. It's essentially an academic conversation around the work that you've submitted, really getting to grips with a topic and helping you understand it in a lot more depth. So I'll move now to look at what Cambridge is looking for. And I'd like to say at the outset that I would really like to echo a lot of what Justin said with regard to NUI Abu Dhabi. The first place to start, though, is, of course, with our entry requirements. And this is one area in which we do have very precise entry requirements, and we will be looking in applicants' files to make sure that applicants are on track to achieve these results. So, for example, in the International Baccalaureate Diploma, you can see there that we would ask for between 40 and 42 points. For the Abitur, we'd ask for between 1 and 1.2 overall, with 14 or 15 in individual subjects. I would ask you to note as well, if you are taking the Abitur, that we will want to see high scores in individual Leistungskurse, particularly where those subjects are required for the course you're applying for at A-level, so the equivalent in the UK A-level curriculum. And so for details of that, you would be welcome to go to the course pages on our website. They will tell you what subjects are required, if any, for that course at A-level. And we would expect to see high scores in the equivalent subjects as part of the Abitur. We do, though, accept a wide range of overseas qualifications. There is a lot more information about this on our website. If you're ever unsure about a particular qualification requirement or subject requirement, then you would be very welcome to contact either myself in the Cambridge Admissions Office or one of our college admissions offices. I mentioned earlier that colleges are responsible for the undergraduate admissions process at Cambridge, so they are very used to hearing from prospective applicants and answering their questions about the application process and our entry requirements. In terms of what we're looking for beyond academic ability and the potential to achieve what we would ask for as our typical entry requirements, I think first and foremost, Cambridge is looking for students who are really enthusiastic about the subject area that is covered by the course that they've applied for. This is often shown by taking relevant subjects in your high school studies, but also exploring that subject area more widely in your own time. And here, this is where we would, at Cambridge, we would make a distinction between extracurricular, which Justin mentioned, is are activities that you do outside your school studies. And we would make a distinction between that and what we would call supercurricular activity. Now, this is maybe activity that is related to your school studies, but is you exploring your subject area in much more detail, perhaps through wider reading, perhaps through, as Justin mentioned, subject Olympiads, potentially through podcasts or through documentaries, through research projects that you've carried out. The International Baccalaureate Diploma has a great inbuilt way of doing this through the extended essay. These are all valid ways of exploring your subject a bit more widely, and is evidence of this subject exploration that we would really look for in an application to Cambridge. As well as demonstrating enthusiasm for the subject area that you're applying for, some courses, particularly in the sciences, will also be looking to make sure that you have a standard knowledge base, really, that we would expect of all applicants. And this knowledge base will involve content, concepts, and other knowledge that we think that students will really need in order to succeed on the course they've applied for. And this links really with subject requirements. It's very common for our STEM courses, our science, engineering, maths, to have quite strict requirements on the subjects that they like students to be taking in advance of studying those courses at university. So to give you one example, our engineering course would require maths and physics, to the highest possible level. So if you're taking the IB, for example, that would be at higher level maths and higher level physics. The third subject is up to you, but we would usually advise taking another maths or science topic just to make your application as competitive as possible. So it is really worth looking at the information on our website, making sure that you are taking the right combination of subjects. And all of this really adds up to our admissions tutors being able to see the fit between you as an applicant and the course that you've applied for. So doing prior research is really important, making sure that you would be keen on the content that the course covers, that you'd be interested in the options that may be available to you in future years, and also that you're happy with the way that the course is assessed. A lot of courses at Cambridge are assessed by end of year exam only. There are very few opportunities for coursework or for longer term projects. So that may be a factor in your decision to apply and which course you might apply to as well. For a small number of courses, we are looking for some vocational commitment as well, so a commitment to the career that naturally follows on from that course. This is only really the case for courses like medicine and veterinary medicine as well. What we're not concerned about at Cambridge are things to do with your background, to do with which school you've attended. And I think this is one of the major differences between ourselves and, for example, NYU. We will not be considering extracurricular activities that you include in your application. So our admissions tutors go through a holistic admissions process when they look at each application that they receive, but they are only focusing on the academic content of each application. So evidence of your ability to date, of your potential to do well on the course you've applied for, and as I was saying, evidence of supercurricular activity as well. We would encourage you to include detail of any extracurricular things you do, sports or music or part-time job, anything like that, caring responsibilities, for example. But they should be sort of framed, I think, in terms of what skills they give you, how, for example, they have developed your time management or other related skills that will help you in your academic studies. I was talking about supercurricular activity just a moment ago. There are lots of resources that Cambridge provides on this front. You don't have to be thinking of applying to Cambridge to use these resources. These are freely available regardless of which university you might want to apply to in future. One of the biggest ones we have to draw your attention to is the second one down, which is HE+. That is a supercurricular resources bank online, which has been created by Cambridge academics and is regularly kept up to date as well. And it covers all the subject areas that you can study at Cambridge. And there are lots of ideas for projects, for extension activities, other online resources that you can take advantage of. They are all sort of brought together on that website. And it's a really great starting point, I think, for those of you thinking about exploring your subject, and a good springing off point where you can then pursue your own interests from that point onwards. For those of you interested in STEM courses, we do have some specific resources here. So Isaac Physics and the I Want to Study Engineering website, which have various problem-solving activities that are really helping to develop your maths and science skills from the way that those subjects are taught at school to the way that you would experience those subjects at university. There are, of course, a huge number of other ways to do this. There are things like even just keeping up to date with subject news. So there's often news around many different subject areas: medicine, engineering, history, archaeology. You could go on. So even just keeping up to date with news in your interested area, your area of interest, could be a really valid way of exploring your subject more widely. There are programs available online, such as the Advanced Maths Support Program, the Enrich website that you can see there, again, providing support for students interested in those subject areas. So I would really recommend you check out lots of the online resources available. And just for this final section, then I'll move on to the application process. I've mentioned choosing a course already and some of the advice that we would have around that. I mentioned earlier that all undergraduate applications to Cambridge go through one of our undergraduate colleges. Now, when you're making your application to Cambridge, you can choose to apply to one of these colleges, or you can choose to make it an open application. Now, the first thing to say at the outset is that there is no statistical advantage or disadvantage to either one of these application routes. What happens with an open application is that we receive that at the Cambridge Admissions Office, which is the central admissions body in the university, and we then use a computer program to assign your open application to a particular college. Now, that college will have received fewer than average applications for your course in that admissions round. So essentially, we are trying to even up the ratio of applications to places at every college to make sure that no student is particularly disadvantaged by choosing a college or not choosing a college. If you're thinking about applying to Cambridge, it's important to note that we do require most applicants to take some form of admission assessment. Now, for some of our courses, this admission assessment happens before we would interview you. So you would need to register in advance to take the assessment that is specific to your course. You should be able to take that at a school or other local centre. It's not something you need to travel for, and not something you need to travel to Cambridge. In the last admissions round in 2020, we were able to put a lot of these assessments online, so they should hopefully be even easier to access. A small number of our courses ask for an assessment at the interview stage instead, so that's only something that you would take if you were invited to interview. But for the latest information, please have a look on the course webpage for the course you're interested in on Cambridge's website, and that will tell you what form of assessment, if any, is required for the course you're interested in. In terms of the actual application process and for Cambridge and how that starts, it's actually quite straightforward. Cambridge is available to apply to through the UCAS application system, which is the UK-wide university applications online portal. So you're able to apply to up to 5 UK universities through UCAS. And of course, one of those choices could be Cambridge. If you're thinking of a medicine course, then you can only apply to up to 4 universities through UCAS. That's because the number of medical schools in the UK is slightly smaller, so you have one less choice there. But there is no separate application process. We actually receive all of our applications through UCAS, so actually it's the only way of going about it. Some UK universities do accept the Common App, which you may be using as well to apply to US institutions. At Cambridge, unfortunately, we don't accept that, so it is really just through the UCAS system that you would be able to send your application to us. In addition to the UCAS application, we ask all Cambridge applicants to fill out an additional form. I won't go into too much detail about this. This is still in the works, but this is just to put on your radar that you will need to fill out another form, and it will ask you for some information that we can't get through the UCAS form, such as the modules that you are studying in your high school courses. This is really useful for the interview stage of the process because it gives our interviewers some idea of content that you might already be familiar with. For some of our courses, we ask for written work. This is to get a sense of your academic skills at the time that you're applying to us. This is only the case for arts and humanities and social science courses. For STEM courses, you wouldn't be asked to submit any kind of written work because we understand that's not part of the curriculum for most STEM subjects. If you're applying for a course that requires a pre-interview test, then you would also take that usually in late October, early November, so about a month before the interviews take place. Usually your college will inform you in mid to late November about whether they would like to interview you or not. All successful Cambridge applicants will have been interviewed. So unfortunately, those applicants who are not taken forward to the interview stage, that is unfortunately the end of the line for their application. But in any given year over the past 5 or so years, I think we've interviewed between 75 and 80% of applicants. So you do have a very decent chance of being invited to interview. The interview itself is very modelled on the supervision system that I was just talking about. So it's really an academic conversation between you and your interviewers, about your interest in the course and about some of the supercurricular activities, some of the wider exploration that you may have been undertaking. There will also be some tasks as well, some material that you may never have seen before, and the interviewers will be interested in your responses to that material. And then just finally, decisions are communicated in the January of every admissions round, and you'll hear back from your college about whether your application has been successful or not, and whether they would like to make you an offer. The vast majority of offers from Cambridge are conditional, so we will ask you to achieve the entry requirements that I set out earlier on in the presentation. So just finally then, I wanted to flag a few ways that you can keep up to date with Cambridge if you're interested and want to explore what we have to offer in more detail. Our international events webpage is very soon going to have podcasts and recorded webinars covering various aspects of applying to and studying at Cambridge. So please do check those out if you'd like some more information specifically around the courses that we offer and how those courses are taught. We've also recently partnered with UniBuddy, which is a platform that allows current students to chat with prospective students. So please have a look out for that on our website as well if you'd like to chat to current international students at Cambridge, get a sense of how they went about the application process, what wider exploration they might have done beforehand, what their day-to-day life is like. It's hopefully a very useful service there. And then, of course, finally, if you did have any concerns around the pandemic and about how that might impact your application to Cambridge, we do maintain a rolling webpage, the link to which you can see there, which has the latest advice on it for prospective students, and just updates on the mitigations that we're taking to account for the disruption the pandemic has caused over the past year or so. That's it from me. Feel free to take a note of my email address. You'd be very welcome to contact me directly afterwards. And also, we do have our virtual tour platform as well. So even though it is very difficult to visit Cambridge at the moment, you would, of course, be more than welcome to have a look at our virtual tour and get a sense of our colleges and departments through that. But I'll leave it there. And I understand we are going to Q&A.
Hi, yes. So we were going to Q&A, that was the plan. We have a slight technical problem with YouTube at the moment in that it is not allowing us to enable the chat function. So we're not going to be going to Q&A, but students, you will all have the opportunity to go and speak to both exhibitors at the fair that's going to start shortly. But what we want to do just before we wrap this up is I just want to ask both of you, Sam and Justin, just to, let me just change the screen here so that students can see all of us. There we go. So I just want to ask you both just to get what is the key advice that you would give to students wanting to apply to your institution? I mean, those presentations were excellent. There's lots of really informative information for students to take away. But if you were to summarize kind of key advice for students, what would that be? And sorry to put you on the spot, Sam. Do you want to go first, Justin? You've had a bit more time to think about this.
No worries.
So I think the most important thing to do is to do your research, really look in depth at the institutions that you're applying to and come up with some really specific reasons of why you're applying. And also think of ways to connect yourself with the university and to demonstrate that fit. So make sure that you're not just repeating things that you find on the website or kind of reframing facts about the university. Like, I want to go to NYU because it's ranked #1 for blah, blah, blah. You know, we know we're ranked #1 for whatever that is. We're much more interested in hearing why we're ranked #1 for you. If you were coming up with the rating systems, what would your ideal university have? And the second thing, I think, is really to make sure that you're setting yourself apart. Since this is a very competitive process, imagine your doppelganger is out there who took all of the same courses, who got the same grades, who did all of these same extra and supracurricular activities. How are you going to set yourself apart from that other applicant? And for NYU and other liberal arts institutions, we look for this in your essay, so your personal essay. Also, we want to see these qualities in your letters of recommendation. So I think overall, just make sure that you're doing your research and that you're finding a way to set yourself apart from all the other students who are applying for a place at NYU.
I completely agree with Justin about the importance of doing your research. I think that's obviously a really important thing to do beforehand. I think for Cambridge and for other competitive universities in the UK, we would look less for a connection with the specific institution and more for a connection with the course that you're applying for. I think this really comes to a fundamental difference between the way that perhaps courses are taught in the US higher education system and the UK system. I think in the UK, particularly at competitive universities, you will be expected to engage with one or maybe two subject areas from the first year of your course. And in some cases, it can be a really deep dive into that content in your first year. So in order to demonstrate that you can hit the ground running with that content, I think it is important to bring out those academic characteristics I was talking about earlier, to make sure that you're taking the right combination of subjects. That can be particularly important in the STEM fields, as I mentioned. And as I say, have a look at ways in which you can explore your subject area in more detail in your own time and going beyond your school studies. But keeping it focused on what you're most interested in. I think there's nothing, there is perhaps nothing more obvious sometimes in an application to us and maybe to another competitive university in the UK, where a student has gone through the motions, if you like. They've read this book and they've participated in this Olympiad, and it feels like they have done that because they feel that that is the best way to apply to Cambridge, not because they're genuinely interested in the content that they've covered as part of that. And that is really obvious. Our admissions tutors are very experienced. They can tell that in an application. So when you're looking at wider subject exploration, always make sure that you're doing things that you're interested in, because that will always shine through the most in your application.
So I can see you nodding along. Is there something else you want to add there, Justin?
Yeah, I was just going to point out one difference I think obviously is when students are applying to NYU and other liberal arts institutions, they're applying undecided. So we have less of that connection to the specific major or course in Cambridge. So it's still important that we do want to know about, where your academic interest lies, where those interests lie, but for the essay portion of it, we're looking a little bit more broad. So both are equally valid. It's just kind of a different approach. So do keep that in mind when you're applying, which kind of essay you're writing. And I would just echo the thing about the extracurricular requirements as well. We can tell right away when a student is just filling up this list of activities and they really don't have anything notable to say about them, that they just showed up at an activity and wanted to put it on the list. We're much more about quality than quantity. We do want to see that you have those things you're passionate about and you've pursued and you have something to show for it, that it's not just, a list that you're trying to fill up. So I agree. Those are really important things.
Okay. So we have a few minutes. Is there anything else that you would like to add to summarize today's session?
Ooh. Now that has put me on the spot.
Sorry, no, that's okay.
No, not so. I think across the board, both UK and US universities, we really understand that the past year has caused a lot of disruption to candidates, and there are ways of sort of communicating that disruption to us in addition to your application. So at Cambridge, for example, we have a specific form that we will be asking applicants to complete in the coming admissions round, where they can list sort of disruption to teaching, for example, so that we can take that into account when assessing their application. But the latest advice and information will always be available on our website. So I would really just encourage students to go there first, and if they have any questions about what they read there, then of course they're more than welcome to get in touch with us.
And likewise for NYU or other US institutions, on the Common App and I'm sure many other applications this year, there's a place specifically to talk about how the pandemic has impacted you. So don't feel like it has to be, complaining or making excuses in some way. We do know that it's been, that everyone has really had a lot of challenges to go through in this process. So if for some reason you have anything to tell us, please don't be afraid to share that. Please do let us know if you've been only academically or physically, just so that we text. The same thing goes for things like extracurricular activities. We know there are many things that you would have been doing otherwise that you probably didn't have the opportunity to do this year. So just always feel free to let us know. We are here to make sure that you're submitting your best possible application. And know that it is a conversation with us, and that it doesn't have to end today. We can continue this if you have more questions, and as you go through this journey as admissions officers, and we are here to kind of help you make it through this process. So do make sure to touch base with us and contact us if you have any questions about this process.
Okay, thank you both very much. I'm sure that the students will be delighted to come see your booth and ask you some questions. Just before you leave, everyone, I just want to go through some key features of the platform that you'll be using today for the virtual fair that's due to start in 15 minutes. All you need to do when you end this presentation, you just close down the tab. You've already logged into the platform, so you can go to the platform. The fair officially opens in 15 minutes, but the booths are there. You can still have a look around the platform. You can collate information. There may be some exhibitors ready in their booths to talk to you now. If not, they will all be there in 15 minutes. And the key things to note are that when you go into a booth, you'll be met with a welcome message. That's not a chatbot. There is a real person behind the booth to talk to you. So do engage in conversation with them. You're not talking to a robot. When you do start to engage in conversation, when you type back, you have the option to request an audio and video call as well. So you can have that face-to-face contact with a university representative. If you are not comfortable using the audio video, absolutely fine, but it's there for you if you want that contact. We also ask that you save any materials that you want to take away from the sessions today. So if you, when you go into a booth, you will have the option to favorite any materials or videos or anything that's in the booth, and anything that you favorite will be added into your virtual backpack, which will be available for you to download after the event. You'll receive a link, usually 24 hours after the event, and that will give you instructions on how to access all the materials that you've saved from this event, that you've favorited, should I say, from this event. You will also be able to access any conversation transcripts and recordings of conversations that you've had as well. So you can look back on everything. There's no need to make any notes. You'll receive all the information virtually. I think that's all that I want to say. I just want to say a huge thank you again to Justin Van Dyke from NYU Abu Dhabi and Sam Twells from the University of Cambridge for delivering this session. And I'm sorry, students, that you were not able to post questions during the live session, but please do visit their booths now at the fair. Maybe give them 5 minutes to grab a water or a coffee, and then I'm sure they'll be there to answer any questions you have. So yeah, thanks again for joining us, and enjoy the fair. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.